Want to see a magic trick? Hello folks, Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU here for another legacy video. And today we are going to be attempting to saw in half our own creatures. Now, this was something that people were kind of losing their minds about in the EDH sphere when it was spoiled as doing something like sawing in half a powerful creature with an ETB effect. Say something like a Dockside Extortionist can be very powerful. So let's get into some of the minutia of this card. Destroy target creature, and in this case, we're usually going to be targeting our own stuff. If that creature dies this way, its controller creates 2 tokens that are copies of that creature, except their base power is half that creature's power, and the same is true for the toughness, and you round up each time. So generally speaking, our ideal scenario looks something like this. We play a powerful creature with an ETB trigger. Think something that gives initiative by legacy standards as a good benchmark for that. Our opponent uses a removal spell on our creature, and in response, we saw in half our own creature. This serves as a counterspell of sorts for the removal spell and gives us 2 more sets of ETB triggers. Legacy is a dark ritual format, so in theory, we can do this by leaving up 1 mana. And if we know things are safe, we can also just kind of do this at sorcery speed. So this is the deck list that Simone submitted with a few minor tweaks, mostly in the sideboard. The general idea here is to use these black initiative creatures, Passageway Seer, as well as Vicious Battle Rager, as our way of getting our late game card advantage, or a way of spiraling the game out of control early on off Ancient Tomb and Dark Ritual. And notably here with the Vicious Battle Rager, since we round up, this is still going to have that 1 power, but its ETB trigger is still normal, as is the other triggered ability, Spiked Retribution. So you have 2 1-power creatures that, if your opponent blocks them, they take 5 damage, which is a thing. If Forge gets involved and you put some +1/+1 counters on these, it ends up being a little bit stronger. And again, since you are rounding up, sawing in half an Orcish Bowmasters ends up being pretty sweet and rather punishing to cards like Brainstorm in particular. Now, I'm not sure if Not Dead After All actually fits into this deck. It's another way to reanimate your grief early on, but when I previously tried playing this card in Legacy with only a single pitch elemental, I kind of found that this wasn't strong enough, especially considering that some amount of the removal in Legacy is exile based. Your Swords to Plowshares, Leyline Bindings, all that sort of stuff. And I found that I didn't often line up something like Not Dead After All, Douthie Voidwalker, and then bring it back after using its ability, because I wanted to just like stay aggressive and keep attacking with the Douthie Voidwalker. Now I'm going to take a second here and head over to one of my sponsors, moxfield.com, which is an absolutely fantastic place to host your deck lists, and is where I have, I don't know, like 400 deck lists of my own. And I saw this post on Reddit of someone who had been working on a Rakdos saw in half deck, with, some amount of challenge results in 5.0s and stuff like that. So, like, as a proof of concept, the general idea of sawing in half your own creatures has some small amount of tournament success to its names. And we'll see whether or not doing this in mono black with these initiative creatures ends up being as competitive as it does just like a red shell that also has access to Fury and Broadside as additional things to go and saw in half. And you can use Fable of the Mirror Breaker to loot away some of these things like saw in half when they're not necessarily going to be good. I guess about the only other thing that I really want to draw some attention to is Force of Despair in the sideboard. This is part of the newer set of Force cards, like Force of Negation and Force of Vigor. If it's not your turn, you can exile a black card from your hand rather than pay its cost, and destroy all creatures that entered the battlefield this turn. So what's the technology? Why are we trying this out? The general idea is that when the Goblins deck goes and does its name sticker goblin thing, its Muxus thing, we want to be able to just answer that regardless of how many creatures are put in play, regardless of kind of how crazy the Muxus hits end up being. And this will get everything from that turn cycle except things that go to hand from cards like Goblin Ringleader and Goblin Matron. There is a 3-mana card. It's, I think, colorless black that gives all creatures -2/-2, and I think it like scries 1 or something like that. I'm blanking on the card name right now. But that's another option that you can play in this slot if you don't particularly like Force of Despair. Force of Despair can be cast for held up mana, but a lot of times with this deck, I am going to be tapping out for larger creatures, so that's a little bit less viable. So yeah, let's hop into it, see how this feels, and if you like what you see today and you need to pick up some Force of Despairs or other cards, check out Cool Stuff Inc. and use promo code ThrabenU to save a little bit on your order. Let's battle. Alright. Opening hand here can Thoughtseize and Grief, but has no way to get to 4 mana for this stuff, and the Saw in Half doesn't do anything. I'm going to ship this one. And here we see the problem of trying to play Ancient Tombs alongside, like to power out initiative creatures alongside like all of these black cards. This is an auto mulligan. Not that it has any gas anyway. We are on 5. So, a couple ways I can do this. I can go Swamp, Grief, pitch some black card, reanimate it, and that is 4 of my cards. Actually, I can do better, right? So, no, I can't do better. Am I on the play or draw? I'm on the draw. So in theory, if I draw any black card, I can go land, Dark Ritual, Grief, pitch black card. Saw in Half, Grief. Is this better than taking the initiative on turn 1? Probably. Alright, let's get rid of initiative creature, Dark Ritual, and see where this goes. As of right now, I'm probably doing something like Grief, pitch, Saw, reanimate it. And we'll just see where this goes. Generic Underground Sea. Am I going to eat a Thoughtseize? Or is this going to be like a Stalactite Stalker? No, it's untapping the mana. So maybe a Ponder? Okay. Full disclosure here. I am recording this at like 5 in the morning. I couldn't get back to... Oh, fuck. Yeah. Couldn't get back to sleep. So if I play with a single brain cell this morning, forgive me. So at this point, I'm mostly hoping that my opponent has fucked up. And by that, I mean they have put a... No, don't win right now. Everything I was just talking about is... Okay, cool. So, what I'm hoping here is that my opponent has fucked up and is about to draw a critical card for their hand, and I get to do hot grief nonsense. There is a black card. So, let us grief, pitching a Saw in Half. The evoke trigger on bottom. I'll take a card from their hand first. No. Wait. Yes? Maybe. Yeah, okay. I'll Saw in Half my grief with the Veil of Summer trigger on the stack and take 2 cards from their hand if they have 2 cards. I only get a Dark Ritual out of this, which is sort of unfortunate. Well, you can't say we didn't try to saw things in half this video. Now I have 4 power in play. And the hope is that my opponent doesn't win this turn. If they don't win this turn, I can hit them for 4 and then Grief again. It kind of depends on how my opponent has built their pile. I imagine they just win right now. That they just like fetch play Thassa's Oracle and it's just fucking GG's for people named Phil. Yep. Yeah, the Veil of Summer definitely a little unfortunate there. I don't have too much to work with here in terms of the sideboard. The opposition agent is actively good. Mindbreak Trap is a little niche. It like technically can do stuff. I'm not excited about it. And the same is true of Surgical Extraction. You can use Surgical Extraction to shuffle after a Doomsday pile. It's more exciting to surgically extract an entire Doomsday after taking it from hand. So I'm probably boarding this in. I'm probably leaving this in the board. So the dismembers are easy cuts. That becomes an opposition agent and a surgical extraction. And then assuming I want the other two surgicals, I need 2 more cuts. The Dauthi Voidwalkers are a little bit awkward if my opponent is... like, if I want to be surgically extracting my opponent. I might go down Vicious Battle Rager. My opponent is just not blocking it. And so the good portion of it is just not the best. If I can get to 4 mana very quickly, it's fine. I think this matchup is largely about Grief, but maybe just like forging this creature up and attacking for, 3, then 3, get the trap for 5. It just ends up being good enough. Maybe this is just better than Dauthi Voidwalker still, despite the awkwardness. Yeah. So this is a classic example of having disruption, but nothing to back it up. And if I don't put a clock on my opponent, unless this first Thoughtseize just takes a Doomsday, this doesn't do anything. Is this worth mulliganing? I think so. Like, something I say a lot when piloting or watching other people pilot Red Prison is, like, a lock piece with no follow-up is not a keepable hand, and I think a piece of discard with no real follow-up is the same. Like, you can argue that the Surgical is a follow-up, but if there's not specifically, like, a Doomsday or a Thassa's Oracle in my opponent's hand right now, this doesn't go anywhere. So let's ship this. Yeah, this is better. So I'll Grief. Yeah, I'm going to keep this like I Grief, Pitch, Vicious, Battle Rager. Not dead after all it. Keep the Reanimate for if things go wrong. And put back a Swamp. Here we go. Grief. Junk, Battle Rager. What are we working with over there? Immediately cursing myself for not keeping the first hand. So I can only take 2 of these Doomsdays, which means I don't take the Doomsdays. I take the mana that gets my opponent to the Doomsday. A little weird, but here we are. We're not dead after all. Comes back with my Wicked Roll, turning it into a 4-power creature. We take the Cabal Ritual. So now I know that my opponent has a single mana source and 3 copies of Doomsday. My opponent is going to want to find something like a Brainstorm to kind of filter their draws, whereas I'm just looking for more points of power at this point. I'm looking for like Orcish Bowmasters, or even like another Grief or Troll, so that Reanimate turns into something reasonable. This is a very bad land for my opponent to draw, since these are triple black pips. All right, a lot of my top decks are now live now that I'm on 4 mana. The initiative creatures are reasonable. And we'll see if we dodge Rituals and Friends for just a little bit longer. Not quite what I meant by that, but okay. So this puts my opponent to 8, which is sort of a magic number, because my opponent now can't do a pass the turn Doomsday line. I just get to kill them on the backswing. So that's nice. Send it. My opponent goes to 4. I'm not even 100% sure that I am supposed to cast this Thoughtseize, because it might just draw my opponent a new card with Veil of Summer. So, like, my opponent didn't do a Ponder or Brainstorm, which they would have done at sorcery speed. They probably play out a Bauble. I think it's pretty likely that that Veil of Summer is in their hand. I think I don't Thoughtseize them. as weird as that is with lethal on board, I think that just ends up making my opponent get one card deeper rather than actually helping me out. Fantastic. So when I'm on the draw, I can start thinking about some more fringe lines, like the whole Mindbreak trap for like Lotus Petal, Dark Ritual, Doomsday Go. But like Dark Ritual, Doomsday Pass doesn't get hit by Mindbreak trap, and Mindbreak trap is not black for cards like Grief, and that matters a lot. I also technically can Null Rod for Lotus Petal. I don't think I'm interested in that. Well, assuming no interaction from my opponent, this hand is kind of insane. Shock this in Dark Ritual, Thoughtseize You, Troll Cycle, Reanimate. Hand's good. Doesn't stop a turn 1 Doomsday, but basically nothing in my deck does. So there's that. What are we doing over there? Cantrip is fantastic. So now I just don't want to see, like, Lotus Petal. Because this now represents Veil of Summer as a counterspell for my Thoughtseize. Okay, now I don't have to shock myself. So that's good. Opponent might have days they're thinking about this, yeah. So that slows me down by a turn cycle. Really more than that, though, because that gets the Doomsday. And my Thoughtseize doesn't get to take that Doomsday, because that one's just chilling on top of Library. So that's awkward. I maybe am not supposed to Thoughtseize here. I maybe should just put my Troll into play. If I Thoughtseize, I can take a Dark Ritual or a Cabal Ritual that allows my opponent to cast the Doomsday. But there's a decent chance that they just have a land in hand already. I think this game has become kill my opponent rather than disrupt my opponent. This is a bit of a weird game in that a lot of the like general heuristics, like disrupt the combo deck as frequently as possible, haven't been true. So if I Thoughtseized, just like I kind of thought, I wouldn't actually stop my opponent from casting and resolving Doomsday here. So I can now Thoughtseize on the next turn cycle and maybe take something that is a part of their plan. But the 6 power that I put into play on turn 2 might not be good enough. All right, my opponent is at 9. They've built their pile. I have minimal agency in disrupting it, so they're dead next turn. Let's see if they can kill me first. Okay. Redundant hand is redundant. Guess I will still Swamp Cycle this. Grab a Swamp. I'll still Reanimate the Troll. But if my opponent just like goes Ritual, 1 ring, get protection, win from there, the second Troll doesn't do anything. But it's not like my opponent is going to attack me for 6 points of damage. So here we are. Yeah. There's the 1 ring. My opponent gets to draw a card with that now. They get protection from everything, including discard that I could top deck. So I don't think there's a lot that I can do here. I could draw Surgical. I guess we'll cast it. Doesn't really matter. Yeah, so the ETB trigger doesn't happen. My opponent has protection from everything. Let's attack him with a Troll anyway. You know, send a message. And it does nothing. My opponent takes 1. But then they just like take a draw step, go to 2 cards in library, draw with the 1 ring, go to 0, cast Thassa's Oracle, and we're dead. It's super unfortunate that my opponent had 2 copies of the 1 ring, so that we couldn't disrupt it with our discard. We end up coming up just a little short here.
Today's video is sponsored by Eminence Gaming. They have run a ton of tournaments at this point, and you might know them from the competitive EDH scene, but their command tower software can be used for all sorts of different formats. It's really easy. You can even just give your players a QR code in order to get them all of their pairings and everything that they can need. I really love this software as a player, and you should talk to your stores about it. Consider using it. It's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, we can make this work. As long as hand disruption is good against what my opponent is doing, this hand is strong. If my opponent gets on board early or for some reason doesn't care about the cards in their hand, hand doesn't do a lot. Current plan is swamp Dark Ritual, or maybe Grief pitch Dark Ritual first, then Dark Ritual Thoughtseize Reanimate. See if my draw step changes that. Not really. Although, what is in my opponent's hand could change this. Excuse me? Excuse me? My opponent is on a Jeskai Rest in Peace Energy Field Helm combo deck list. It is 2024, right? Like, even though it's early in the morning, it's still 2024. It's not like 2013. All right. Take a Swords. Dark Ritual. Dismiss these. I guess I'll start on the Reanimate. Take Lightning Helix now. Bowmaster my opponent. Make their Ponder worse. And then take Energy Field with Thoughtseize later. That seems fine. I guess you can take the Energy Field first and give it 0 chance of getting in play if my opponent is playing something like Lotus Petal. All right, they're just going in. No shuffle. I get the ping. And I've got a decent amount of damage here. Well, that was unexpected. I don't actually think this is a problem. Like, I still just hit my opponent for 5. The Energy Field can come into play, and then I just Thoughtseize a card out of my opponent's hand. I hate everything. Okay, I mean, should have taken the Energy Field over Rest in Peace. Like, I already talked about that after I did it. I'm not dead to this. I can get an initiative creature and get myself out of this. At this point, I'm just going to, like, see if I get an initiative creature. This is going to take 20 turns. Okay, it is now turn 10. My opponent has Isochron Scepter, Swords to Plowshares. So, like, they are just, like, a literal 20... What's that, like, 2013 control deck with a couple extra new additions. That's fine. All I need to do is make sure that the Vicious Battle Rager resolves, and as long as that happens, Forge kills my opponent relatively easily. So Lightning Helix is a problem card here because of the life gain. I'll take that. Tap this for black mana, and we have a game again. Now, somewhat unfortunately, I do now have to cycle through the Undercity twice because Energy Field only prevents damage. It does not prevent loss of life. So game is not over. And at any point, my opponent can, like, draw a Helm or whatever, and life's bad, and I lose. Lorien Revealed is fine. So I'm going to forge up Vicious Battle Rager. And I can kill the Teferi this way, or at least attempt to, but Isochron Scepter. Again, what we really care about is trap. It's somewhat unfortunate that I can't just, like, scry and work towards more initiative creatures, but it's all about trap. Yeah, so I'll take the Orum's Chant. Well, my Scepters are in exile. 1. I guess ultimately the Isochron Scepter is scarier than anything else, right? Because Isochron Scepter on Lightning Helix means that I can't ever win the game. Sure. So I get to trap my opponent down to 1 life. Cool. Let's attempt to kill Teferi. Oh no. I never could have foreseen this happening. I know my opponent has a Force of Will right now, so I don't think I just jam this into the Force of Will. Actually, well, no, Urborg. Yeah, I'll wait till I draw a piece of discard. I'm not in a rush. Like, my opponent, like, technically has a top deck that kills me at some point, but it's all about wiggling for position here. Okay, there's the helm, so I do die. I will concede. Yeah, so I lost this one to the absolute perfects after I didn't take the energy field. I don't think it's normal to play around Orum's Chant as a top deck into Rip Energy Field off Ancient Tomb Tundra Island. Like, the Lightning Helix wasn't castable though, so like, it was fine. I guess like my opponent gets to Lightning Helix if I don't take it. Yeah, but my opponent's deck is not going to be very good at winning the game, so hopefully we can recover. These are the things that I'm looking at here. My dismembers are not particularly strong. Those are the first things to go. And I probably get rid of not dead after all. My creatures aren't going to die naturally from my opponent's stuff a lot of the time, so my opponent's going to exile them. My reanimates notably do get worse. I think I still have to keep them in the deck. I wish I had more threats in the sideboard, but like, I guess this like gets rid of a Teferi. I don't know that I'm excited about that. Keep, and I'll figure out my life. I can grief, pitch, grief. If I grief, pitch, grief, a dark ritual, bought seas, saw in half grief, take 3 cards of my opponent's 6. So I guess see if dark ritual resolves first. Now, all thought seas. We're mostly checking for a counterspell or cert. What the fuck is get lost? Is that the exile thing? Yeah, that's fine. I will take all of these cards. So, new dark ritual, grief, pitch, grief. And since I know what's coming, I'm just going to saw this in half now as well. I take it all. You have nothing. Good day. So, we have over-discarded my opponent, but hopefully 4 damage on per turn cycle on turn 1 when my opponent only has lands in hand is fine. Sometimes it's not. Sure. I'm kind of all in immediately. That helps a lot with stabilizing. And just as a generic statement, I think the general like Isochron Scepter Rip Helm stuff, Rip Energy Field stuff is fully power crept out of Legacy. And I think it has been for years, honestly. It doesn't mean we can't like lose to it from time to time, because like it does a thing, but it's such a tough ask to do something this slow in a format as fast as Legacy. Like, the Sticker Goblin decks exist, Doomsday decks exist, Reanimator decks exist. And, like, my opponent had the game, air quotes, locked up as of, like, turn 3 of last game. And I didn't look at the final turn count, but I imagine it was, like, turn 16. Just kill your opponent. Beans, Murktide Regent, Uro, they're so good. Just kill your opponent. Sure, that's fine. Might mean that my opponent's last card is Energy Field if they're not using Lightning Helix. Unfortunate. Put my opponent to 2. And then pass the turn. At some point I'll Chrome Box Reanimate to play Vicious Battle Rager. Okay. No immediate Energy Field. On half would be a sick draw. My opponent doesn't let me get to that point. My griefs are not the best anymore. Initiative creature is great, though. specifically because it's got a big enough booty to live through a lightning helix. Opponent goes to 3. I'm not expecting days. Let's just do this. Conceptually, the black card can be useful later. Sure. For some grief lines, so I don't want to commit it before I have to. Sure. Okay, so I lose grief, and this is probably a turning point. But, and I mean this with all possible due respect, my opponent's deck is bad. So, like, I can still potentially win this game despite how miserable this is. But I think I'm just going to fast forward. Yeah, see, like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm going to play a 1-mana artifact that shuts off my opponent's engine, which doesn't happen with something like Beans, and then I get to drop a threat, and my opponent will be back on a 3-turn clock rather than having inevitability. Yep. Are you going to factual counterspell me and just have all the perfects? No, okay, cool. We'll shut off Scepter and jam a threat and see where this goes. Troll is interesting. I don't think Troll is a land. I think Troll is a threat. I'm 1 mana source away from that being true. We're not going to cycle here. My opponent's deck is going to have a fair amount of top deckable removal. For sure. I do have to keep in mind that, like, Helm is a thing that could happen as well. That's no shuffle, so they have presumably found a removal spell to deal with Douthie, or alternatively, a win. A second Troll is incredibly awkward. This puts my opponent to 1, assuming it goes through. Sure. What does a map token do? I have to control a creature in order to do the exploring. Awkward, but okay. So let's turn that into a land. Next turn, I can imprint and cast a Troll. I can try to save both Trolls as threat, but, like, the Troll is a 1-turn clock. I would like to get it in play ASAP. Aw. Just kills my opponent if they brainstorm. Activate only as a sorcery. That is incredibly awkward. It's like, go wide and explore, or put my opponent on a 1-turn clock. I think I'm going to go wide. And I think I'm going to tap the Ancient Tomb in case things get a little weird. Force of Will. This is the reason not to tap the Ancient Tomb. But I want to have some flexibility here. I'll pass the turn. Then we'll cast Troll next turn, put my opponent back on a 1-turn clock, unless something changes, which it does not. Ripped is not great. So let's Chrome Box. I'll still imprint the Reanimate. It's not doing anything this game. I assume my opponent has no creatures, or very close to no creatures. And the land can still be played out as something that is not going to cause me to take damage from the Ancient Tomb, which is starting to become relevant. Alright, so no immediate removal spell for Troll. Opponent could have some red cards locked in hand. Helm plus land kills me here. It's Rip Energy Field, so now I have to do the whole initiative thing. I'll fast forward again. Alright, it's a few minutes later. It's turn 18. My opponent Teferi bounced my Pithing Needle out of play and can now Orum's Chant lock me out of the game. I'm going to go ahead and concede at this point. GG's.
Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, which is an absolutely awesome place to keep all of your deck lists. I keep all of my personal deck lists there as well, in addition to all of the stuff that I do for the stream. And in the future, they're going to have a social media site on here too. So if you're worried about other certain websites dying, maybe join Moxfield, put your deck lists up there, and in the future, you'll be there for social media stuff too. Okay, before we get started with this round, I just want to clarify something because I'm not sure how well Sleepy Me handled this morning. When I was talking about my opponent's deck last round being bad, what I meant was like that general macro archetype of prison control that my opponent was trying to play is just completely invalid in current Legacy,
with so many main deckable things, just answering those strategies, with Passageway being a great answer to that. And I'm not sure if I fully articulated that thought, because I was sleepy. With that being said, my hand is an absolute keep here, and we are going to do some sicko grief shit with this hand. Alright. I'll take a Karn. I'll not dead after all my creature. It comes back. I'll take my opponent's Goblin Welder, and my opponent is fully at the mercy of the top of their deck now. And we'll see if they top deck anything hot. Nope, just oops all Lotus Petals, .deck. Do I, for any reason, want to reanimate a Goblin Welder and add 1 power to the board? It doesn't really change the clock. It could ever so slightly. I think I'm just going to say no here. If we're playing against like a black deck that has edicts, like maybe it's different. Oh, wow. LED is uncommon in painter lists these days. Like that is a whole... Stop it! That is a hold... let's turn off auto yields. That is a holdover from a much older era of painter where it was an all-in combo deck. And now that I've just got like a third fucking reanimate, like I'll make the 1/1. So this can target either player, so I can use this to kind of fuck with my opponent's permanents, which is cool. I don't play that with my opponent having double Ancient Tomb. So 5, 10, 15 versus 4, 8, 12. I believe that I do not attack with Goblin Welder, and I hold that up for shenanigans. Down to 8. Pass turn. So much mana. Good thing my opponent doesn't have Fireball. 4, 5, 6. Nah, we'll just attack for the 4 here. Shaw. Only goes to 4. I guess I could like play Bowmaster, ping my Bowmaster, reanimate my Bowmaster, ping my Bowmaster, reanimate my Bowmaster. But let's just not. Okay, cool. Grief continues to be a solid Magic the Gathering TM card. Alright, I'm super interested in Null Rods and Pithing Needles here as ways to interact with the Painter Grindstone combo, as well as some other stuff such as Urza's Saga, Artifact Mana, LEDs. Bowmasters is kind of mid. It has some text versus Fable, and it can kill specifically Goblin Welder. Not excited about it. I'm probably keeping it. What don't I want? I probably keep the Saw in halves. Griefing my opponent and stripping their initial hand is very good against most openers. Not everything. I might Surgical. Surgicaling Painter is pretty good. Circling Grindstone is unlikely to happen. There's probably only 2 of them in the deck. Edicts are okay. Opposition Agents are okay. I just don't have enough reps with this deck to kind of get a feel for what I don't need here. I think I'm going to get rid of Not Dead after all. It's narrower than Reanimate. And maybe I do something that looks like this. Kind of unsure. What are we doing here? The hand's a keep. Feel pretty confident about that. I think I am just playing an initiative creature on turn 1. Just like Chrome-Mox, Imprint something. Maybe Troll. Like Chrome-Mox, Imprint, Troll, Dark Ritual in either one of my lands. I might imprint this. Okay. Did you keep a no-lander? Or are you a second main phase land drop hipster? You are. Imprinting Troll? Or imprinting this land? If I imprint this land, I go Ancient Tomb, Dark Ritual, 5 mana, Thoughtseize You, Vicious Battle Rager on turn 1. I think I like that. Let's do that. Imprint, Yaw, Dark Ritual. Thought sees you. And this is after a mulligan, by the way. Surgical Extraction and Goblin Engineer. I probably take the Engineer here, as it is a tutor. And Recursion. Let's do that. And then we drop the initiative creature. We're not using our graveyard, so my opponent's Surgical is kind of a blank. This is a much worse clock than something like Caves of Chaos Adventurer or Seasoned Dungeoneer. But hopefully it is good enough. It's possible that I don't forge onto Vicious Battle Rager here, and I instead flash in Orcish Bowmasters. Oh gosh, I hate it when Painter does this. It makes this thing look all weird. I think I'm kind of interested in beefing up the Orcish Bowmaster token, because if this ever becomes block, it's just 5 damage anyway. I kind of want to be attacking for more damage immediately, but if I do this line, I'm much better defensively. All right. Swamp Cycle. Get Swamp. Is this supposed to be able to tap for blue? I guess so. It feels weird. It felt like in my head that this was going to be some sort of timestamp thing. Forge. I think I'm just forging up the Bowmasters here. Or the defense. I love this. My opponent did not block. Oh, this hurts me. A lightning bolt, sure. Oh, just naturally draw one of your 2 grindstones. Oh, that's cool. My opponent's last card is Surgical, so they don't guarantee to have the mana for Painter. So I can't let them take the initiative here, actually. I need to block as to not give them that next land drop. And then we figure things out from there. I'm trapping. Hit my opponent for 5. Huh. So attack, put to 12, saw in half, trigger initiative twice, and hope that goes somewhere. Sounds pretty good. Saw in half, not exactly the removal spell of choice versus Painter. All right. So I draw my card, Bowmasters. There's a punish for not tapping differently. Does Douthie Voidwalker do anything at this point of the game? Let's say no. I'm just going to get another Vicious Battle Rager. This is a valid blocker. A very valid one at the size of 4/8. I don't end up Bowmastering because I did not tap this. Okay. My opponent's not quite low enough that I can just kill them with a trap in upkeep. But that's super unfortunate. My opponent had back-to-back top decks that kill me. Not too much to be done there. Oh, right. I won the previous one. We get to try again. I think I'm happy with this. Like, I can consider like going up an opposition agent over 1 Bowmasters to make tutoring worse. I think I'll do that when I'm on the play. What am I doing? Chrome Mox. Imprint something, like let's say a Reanimate, Dark Ritual, Troll Cycle, get land, go back up to 3 mana, play Douthie Voidwalker and Reanimate. The hand's a keep, and I just like figure out whether or not I want to expose myself to my opponent's Surgical Extraction on turn 1 or not. Reanimate's always going under. I think I do want to do this. Get the swamp, play this, and now it's just a question of like which one of these things do I want to approach on turn 1. I think it's Douthie and Reanimate, and I just put my opponent to the Surgical Extraction test, and if they fail this test, I probably just kill them in roughly 2 turns. It is difficult, but not impossible for my opponent to out-goldfish this. Because I have to do it without the welder and the engineers and stuff. They're just not going to be relevant with Douthie Voidwalker in play. Nice. Send it. Opponent's at 11. This is 6, 9, 10, 11 in theory. I think I'm just gonna do this now and not let anything get weird in terms of blocker, or not, sorry, in terms of like, I don't know, the Dalthy Voidwalker getting bolted in response to the Bowmaster, and then something comes back from the graveyard, and I just like accidentally lose. This is Legacy right here. This is me on my turn 2 having 6, 9, 10, 11 power in play. And this is a stark contrast to, say, like last round, which went to like turn 18 or 20 or something absurd like that. Like this is high power gaming. Recruiter is fine. Opponent is currently facing lethal from these 2 creatures alone. So they'll need to see what, like a Fury? I guess I could have a Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt this, take 6, 7, 8 damage. Yeah, okay. GG's. So I think this is a weak opening hand that is not a mulligan. I have Thoughtseize and can potentially reanimate an opponent's creature that I Thoughtseize. This is kind of a weird one for my opponent, as they're presumably some sort of fair creature deck in that, like, Espervile, Dead Guy, Ale creature wheelhouse. So they want to stop my initiative creature, but if they do so, I get to reanimate it. And if they take my reanimate, they're taking a card that is currently a blank. And I have 2 different ways to disrupt something like a Stoneforge Mystic that is a powerful turn 2 play. This is probably a really weird decision for them. They have taken the reanimate. This probably means that they are a creature deck. Ooh. This doesn't change my turn 1. My turn 1 is always still Thoughtseize. Okay. It's awkward that both Grief and Thoughtseize can take my initiative creature here. Grief requires a 2-for-1 from my opponent. Was their hand a mulligan, actually? Like, this is really bad, right? They don't have black for Dalthy Voidwalker. They don't have a reanimate for Grief. They just have 2 Thoughtseizes. I think I would have mulliganed that hand. Yeah, I don't know about that one. The next question is, do I want to Chromebox Dismember right now, so that I never lose that to a discard spell? I think no. It's really awkward if my opponent like top decks a Reanimate though, and like I get griefed and I lose Passageway Seer and Dismember. I think I'm just going to set myself up to cast this card next turn. So I guess the next question is, why white? Swords to Plowshares comes to mind. Seasoned Dungeoneer comes to mind. All right. So there's the 2-for-1. Wasteland is fine. I'll trade that for an Ancient Tomb at some point. Awkward Thoughtseize is awkward. I'll take a Dalthy Voidwalker that my opponent can't cast. But I am expecting that this game is going to go on for a little while, so I'm just going to take the 1-for-1 now while it is relevant. Sure. That's fine. The Troll Cycle is now awkward, as my opponent can upgrade their Dalthy Voidwalker to a Troll. So I think I am waiting to cast the Troll, which does mean it can get taken by discard, which is awkward, but we're just going to kind of accept that. Yeah, well, okay. I'm like not the most happy about this. So this puts me to 9, which is a 3-turn clock, and I'm also putting my opponent on a 3-turn clock. Sure. But the primary difference is that they get the first attack step here, and I have 2 Ancient Tombs in play. So this does require me top decking like my own Dalthy Voidwalker to block, or a removal spell or something. This is not just free, and I think you can even make an argument that it's possible that I am not supposed to even cast the Troll, and that I'm supposed to draw out of this in another capacity. Well, I'm not winning by blocking. Send it. Opponent's at 12. I can ping their Bowmaster, block their Orc when they attack. Oh, Thoughtseize me. Take that life loss. Alright. Opponent sends it in. Ping Bowmaster. Block token. take 3, go to 2, which is a very unfortunate number. I want my own Douthie Voidwalker here, which this was not. I can attack for 7. I died at Douthie. GG's. Things did not quite line up well here. So, against the opposing reanimation deck, I kind of like Surgical. Shoulder's Edict is okay. I don't think I'm going to go this direction. I think my opponent's going to be favored against me. I think I have better things for them to discard and then reanimate than they do. I think I get rid of Not Dead After All, and then just do a little trimming to make the rest work out. What does this hand do? Nothing really. Like, I can grief my opponent, play a Bowmaster. I don't get to mana for this. I'm a little safe against their stuff. I would like to be proactive on the play. All right, so how much do I believe that my opponent has a creature in their opening hand that I can reanimate? This is some fucking sketch shit. Like Chromox Imprint, Thoughtseize, reanimate is the plan. This is not a happy plan. This does not bring joy. I don't like how quickly I am going all in here. And it's really awkward if my opponent has a Surgical. How does this read? You control. So they were Esper. I think I just basically lose this game. I'm very unhappy. I think I'm committed, but I am unhappy about it. This is not the Troll Douthie Voidwalker grief initiative creature that I was hoping for when I kept this. The Troll's reasonable if I draw another Reanimate. Otherwise, this Strix just gets eaten by a Bowmasters at some point. Well, cool. Please fire off your swords to plowshares immediately? Damn, they didn't do it. I still need to do this. I need to make this land drop. And I think I'm going to trade Reanimate for swords to plowshares and just be okay with that. It's not like waiting a turn means that my opponent suddenly won't have the mana up. Like, they don't have anything going on in hand. They're unlikely to tap out immediately. They have flash creatures in their deck like Bowmasters. Now what's the holdup? Is there like not a Tundra in the deck or something that you can fetch here? Oh. What's going on? Why would they not swords and use the mana now? What is that an indicator of? And what if I get to like saw in half because they let me untap? Rats. Sure. Am I fine firing off Thoughtseize now and at worst taking Ephemerate? I think so. It's sort of awkward that like if I waited one turn for the Reanimate, I'll take the Strix. I would have gotten 2 Thoughtseize first, but I cannot rely on that. I don't think that is reasonable when I have already used 1 Thoughtseize. So it's a 3 in 51 chance of drawing exactly Thoughtseize on my next draw step. I don't like playing towards that. Sure. All right, I'll hold this Ancient Tomb in hand until I need the mana, since my opponent has shown a known wasteland. I think my complaint about my current deck is that I kind of go all in very quickly. And if my initial play doesn't work out, I don't have a ton of good follow-up. Like, I don't have a consistent engine, because a lot of times I'll get cut off of mana. All right, Ephemerate, Scrubland, Swamp over there. Opponent, like, definitely feeling the downsides of playing synergy deck, like a synergy deck here, rather than a deck with just individually powerful cards. If these Ephemerates were any Magic the Gathering card that was just singularly powerful, I would be really far behind right now. I've dealt myself 8 points of damage between Thoughtseizes, Reanimates, and Friends. And really more than that because of Swords to Plowshares. So if my opponent was pressuring me in any capacity, I'm in terrible shape. Now, that's not to say that my opponent won't find a moment to do something cool with their Ephemerate. That That doesn't feel great. Surgical Extraction. I know my opponent has Ephemerate. I guess we're taking that. Feels a little weird. Opponent's at 11. Surgical Extraction on Ephemerate was not on my bingo board for today. You may ephemerate your grief if you like for no value. Okay, yeah. Really? The blue is just for Baleful Strix? We live in a 40% of the metagame Orcish Bowmasters world. I don't like that. Like, I am a him stan, don't get me wrong, but I don't think I am on the Manatithe / Baleful Strix train. My opponent has 4 swords for removal. Alright. Got it. That's a Reanimate on a Strix, which does cost my opponent some life. Sort of humorous that they draw that right after I Surgical. That's life. I mean, we took an Ephemerate, though. Like, it wasn't doing anything immediately, but it is an instant, so, like, they could do some things with attacking me in my draw step. We're bottoming out here. I get the first attack, and I have a higher density of creatures in my deck than my opponent does. So, question now becomes, do I trade Baleful Strix for Baleful Strix? Or do I try to draw a Bowmaster while risking them drawing a Bowmaster? I think I stay aggressive. In addition to Bowmasters, my opponent also has Swords to Plowshares in deck, so I should probably respect their higher density of removal. That's a rough draw. That takes out this grief and almost certainly means that I lose this game. I don't think my own deck is particularly powerful. I feel like I'm having these powerful starts and then no ability to do anything in the mid game. Like, I am losing to very slow opposing decks just because I have nothing going on after my initial play. I'm not exactly sure how to fix that. Another Bowmaster's rough. GG's. Okay, so this opening hand is reasonable if I Thoughtseize my opponent. They have a creature that's worth reanimating, and I reanimate it. But in every timeline that's not one of those, I essentially have a 4-card hand. I don't think I like this. This is a mediocre hand that I'm absolutely willing to keep. It's not particularly explosive. I don't get to just, like, play the initiative immediately and do something cool with it. Oh boy. So, what's the plan here? I can take Prismatic Ending and my Bowmaster lives for longer. This is outdated tech that may or may not be good. If my opponent has other graveyard-based synergies, like, say, Murktide Region or something like that, like, this might make sense again. I'm very skeptical. I can take Terminus so my opponent can never take out Bowmasters and, like, Passageway Seer with the same card. I think I'm just going to respect the search for Azcanta. That's in my opponent's deck list. And this could just be boomer technology that someone hasn't let go. But I think I am going to overly respect that card in case there's extra graveyard-based synergies that I need to prepare for. I think the best card in the hand is the Prismatic Ending, but I'm unsure about that. I'm hoping my opponent puts a Ponder or equivalent on the stack in this next turn cycle. I would love to get a little extra value out of the Orcish Bowmasters, because otherwise it's just a 1/1 that takes a Prismatic Ending out of hand. And I think I'm going to be okay with that. Not happy, but okay with it. Alright, I need more land. 4/4 locked in my hand is not a good place to be. As long as I draw a land, like, this is a banger set of cards that happens to accidentally dodge Force of Negation. Alright, opponent not willing to Prismatic Ending the Orcish Bowmasters. Oh? No, second main phase Hipster. Got it. Where is my Saw in Half? Alright, I am unhappy drawing Thoughtseize. I just want more mana here. even if it's a dark ritual. And let's see what's going on over there, like what has happened in the meantime. My opponent could brainstorm, yeah, and probably put a Terminus 2 down, which makes everything pretty awkward, yeah. Okay, so there's a Terminus 2 down now. I've got Counterspell to worry about, Swords to worry about. This is bad. Like, just all around very bad. I think I'm just going to take the flexible counterspell, or like actual factual counterspell here. Force of Will and Force of Negation, at least some portion of the time, do require the 2-for-1. Is it Murktide? It is Murktide. So I was correct in my respect of Search for Azcanta earlier. Unfortunately, my opponent just ended up producing this anyway. I think this Murktide region is just going to outpace literally everything that I am capable of doing. I go to 14, put myself on a 2-turn clock. I don't have real removal for a Murktide, right? I just have, like, Saw in half, which doesn't really answer the problem, and Dismember doesn't really answer it either. I can't clock from 14 faster than this Murktide Regent with all this stuff backing it up, especially if Terminus is involved. I guess they don't Terminus away their Murktide anymore. But I think Swords, Force of Will is good enough for me to pack this up. I'm not the most happy with my options here. I'm going to get rid of the Not Dead After All versus a white removal deck list. I'll play one thing that can help me answer a Murktide Regent and an opposition agent. I don't like my boarding options here. I feel very unfavored in this matchup. No? This doesn't do anything. Like, I can't get to 4 mana to play my threats. I can Thoughtseize my opponent while having 2 to 3 mana. I think I just have to say no to this. This is not good either. I'm not willing to go deeper than this, but I'm very unhappy with this deck. Like, despite having this Grief core, I think all these 4-drops that are playing are... this is old school. So Temporary Lockdown absolutely fucks up my Bowmasters. This is neat. I like what my opponent's got going on here. Just unhappy noises. I think the easiest way for me to win is to top deck a Reanimate? Reanimate Troll that gets in under Counterspell. Opponent not opting to fire off Ponder immediately. Does that mean you drew a Brainstorm? Oh, I see. You are just going to cycle the Lorien Revealed. That's fine. Getting a basic. I'm just going to play this now, which plays into something like Prismatic Ending. But I know my opponent is rocking actual factual Counterspell, and I don't want to lose to that. Oh shit, it's Reanimate. That's a lot less exciting with Counterspell held up. So I think I'm chilling until I have a window to play this around Counterspell, because this is really strong. Sure. I can cycle and put it in Graveyard at end of turn. I think I'm okay with that. Just thin a land from my deck. I mean, that's cool. I'm not going to claim that it's perfect or anything, because like my opponent has their next land drop covered, but it's fine. How am I navigating this? Am I just going to trade Reanimate for Counterspell and then flash in an opposition agent at the end of my opponent's turn? I don't think I let them use any mana in this turn cycle and just get that virtual advantage. Sure. That definitely makes my opposition agent worse. Again, the next land drop is also just covered here. My opponent can trade for Counterspell if they want, but then I make a better body, which is fine. Hello, Mr. Troll. Death by 1,000 cuts here. Opponent's at 12. Reanimate Mentor is, I guess, a thing. I don't think that's good for me. I think Reanimating Troll is better than Reanimating Opposition Agent. Force of Will, pitching Protect. This is old school. Alright, 5 lands. This next Troll will be hard castable. My opponent can temporary lockdown and get rid of Bowmasters and Orc token, and then play their Ponder. Is that a mistake? Or is it worth the 1 life if they are going to temporary lockdown it away anyway? Like, is the difference between 10 and 11 a meaningful difference or not? I don't know. Feels a little weird to me. This is my graveyard only, right? Yeah. So at 6 mana, this gets me back Opposition Agent, which is awkward. I think I just play this as a land and slam the troll and make my opponent deal with a 2-turn clock. They haven't done a lot of development in terms of like casting cantrips to set up, but like they are a blue-white control deck list. They can cast things like Lorien Revealed to refuel, and then things get scary very quickly. Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, I'll block. My opponent becomes the Monarch. This is a disaster if they draw a Swords to Plowshares off this Monarch trigger or already have one. Damn it! Otherwise, it's fine. I don't know whether or not they had it when they played that. This game gets incredibly awkward very fast. I think my opponent buries me with the Monarch here. I've been wrong before. This gets to outscale these tokens, but I am 1 more Swords to Plowshares away from, I think, permanently being out of this game, though. Like, despite the fact that I am at 17 life, I think if my opponent plays another spot removal spell, this game is just over. Again? Fuck. So I can block, kill 1. My opponent takes the initiative and gets to get a basic land, and they get to hold the initiative, which means that I don't get to continue to scale this up. That was a disaster. And I think this is another point of good contrast versus the energy field deck. Like, my opponent played a card that drew them a card every turn for the rest of the game and created 2 tokens. And then they played another one that made them 3 tokens and also got them the initiative and would have retaken Monarch back as well. And I think there's just a very telling difference between these styles of deck. Like and I say this lovingly, like my opponent's deck has a little bit of that like Miracles Dirtle in it. In that, like we've got actual counterspell, we've got predicts, the search for Azcanta, but like they're not fucking around in terms of winning the game. And I think that is a very good thing. All right, so my opponent is only going to take the favorable attack here. They're not going to let me take out these tokens while gaining some life. And then probably next turn, I'm just dead. Thank you, deck. And I think we'll go ahead and toss in our hat and call it a day here with a 1-4 league. So I think my own deck today was pretty bad. Sorry, Simone, I don't think this one quite works. And I think there's a couple reasons for this. The reason 1, Not Dead After All is incredibly good with Grief in particular, but any time that you don't have the card Grief, this is just not an appropriate power level format. Not good enough for Legacy. Words are tough. And the reason is because in a format like Modern, a lot of the removal is damage and destroy, with like red and black being very central to that format. But in Legacy, Swords of Plowshares, Prismatic Ending, Terminus, like these are more common sorts of removal. And there's also a decent amount of bounce in the form of things like Brazen Borrower and that black-red sorcery speed descend spell that Connor tricked me into playing that I've forgotten the name of. And I don't think Not Dead After All is great. So let's pull that to the side. Beyond that, these 4-drops are really awkward because Dark Ritual gets you to 3 mana. In a lot of these mono black decks, Dark Ritual gets you to the top of your curve. Dark Ritual gets you to Douthie Voidwalker and Thoughtseize. Dark Ritual gets you to Opposition Agent. It gets you to Orcish Bowmasters plus Thoughtseize. Whereas in this deck, Dark Ritual doesn't get you to 4. And so you aren't spamming that initiative creature on turn 1. And even when you do, these are just worse initiative creatures than what exist in the other colors. And so they don't clock quite as hard. There's a very big difference between Vicious Battle Raiser, Orgit attack for 3, and Caves of Chaos Adventurer attack for 7. Like, it's more than double with the red initiative creature. So I think leaning on these bodies is just not strong enough. The Saw in Half does some neat things. Like, Saw in Half plus Grief off Dark Ritual is really cool. But ultimately, I think because the initiative creatures are tough to get in play in the first place, and you still have to have permanent mana left for Saw in Half afterwards, I think this general strategy gets the thumbs down. So I think these cards are working too hard, and Saw in Half is like sketch, but maybe defensible. Another problem is that outside of discard, this deck is very poor at interacting with creatures that are on the board, when normally that's something that's really strong within Black's wheelhouse, with like Edicts, Dismembers, Fatal Pushes, and Friends. And as we saw when a Murktide Regent hit play, like, what am I doing? Like, what in the 75 answers that? Like, I could Force of Despair it if I'm bringing in something that will 2-for-1 myself when I'm already quickly going Hellbent in the early game. So I'm not doing a good job of getting to this 4-drop, which I consider my end game. And I also don't have a real mid game. My turn 1s are incredible. Like, Grief Reanimate, Grief Not Dead After All, Grief Saw in Half. And maybe if you're playing a black-red version that has Furies, you can make something like this defensible. But I think many of our opponents gave us a lot of time today, and I just could not capitalize on that time because I was not playing enough singularly powerful Magic the Gathering cards. So let me know in the comments kind of what you think of this one. We did some neat things, like sawing in half the initiative creatures multiple times was like cool. That was a highlight. But this one felt clunky to me. But if you're going to do some tuning of this, check out Cool Stuff Inc. and use promo code ThrabenU to save 5% on your next order. And folks, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. See ya!